รื่องของความสามารถของประเทศไทยในศักยภาพการแข่งขันระดับโลกเป็นเรื่องสำคัญมากนะคะแต่ละปีจะมีรายงานออกมาโดย IMD ค่ะสถาบันจัดอันดับความสามารถในการแข่งขันของเศรษฐกิจระดับโลกปีที่ผ่านมาประเทศไทยอันดับตกลงไป2อันดับนะคะอยู่ที่อันดับที่29สาเหตุเป็นเพราะอะไรและจะทำอย่างไรให้ดีขึ้นนะคะวันนี้ตอบโจทย์โอกาสที่ดีนะคะดิฉันจะคุยกับ Professor สเตฟาน กาเบลลี่ค่ะผู้ก่อตั้งสถาบัน IMD มาเยือนไทยในโอกาสที่ TMA จัดงานเพื่อที่จะพูดคุยกับกูรูระดับนานาชาติในโอกาสที่ TMA ครบรอบ50 ปีค่ะ Professor Stefan thank you for joining me
It's a pleasure
I just introduced that IMD latest report Thailand has fallen to 29What makes Thailand less competitive?
Oh, it was a very exceptional period of time for Thailand with a lot of unrest, you know that better than me. And of course, in those very exceptional period of time, it's very difficult to assess competitiveness as usual. And I think that the growth of Thailand has been slowing down, the exports were not as good as usual, the investment were going down. There was a lot of uncertainty, and now you see that in the result of the statistics.But let's keep in mind the statistics are still the one about 2013 because this is a full year and now we have to see what will happen in 2014.
Seems only bad things happening in Thailand.
No, not really. I think there is a lot of resilience in Thailand. I mean, it's a country which has had always the capacity to rebound on problems and to try to pick itself up.And probably it's a country where everybody is expecting perhaps a little bit more of predictability, a sense of direction. It's very often I like to say that there is no favorable wind for the one who doesn't know in which direction it's going. So I think that people expect a sense of direction which has to be decided by Thailand itself.
People must be wondering why does competitiveness matter for any country?It
does matter a lot because this is the best way we have found in order to increase the prosperity of a nation and the well-being of people. When I started studying economics, when I was even younger than now at the university, economics was really about interest rates, balance of trade. It was very focused. Now when we are speaking about a country, we speak about efficiency of the government, about the value system, about education, about technology.We speak about a lot of things, and all this has been incorporated into competitiveness because we know that for a country to succeed, it has to manage a totality of competence, of skills, of resources in order to be successful.
How has political stability is taken into account when you assess each country competitiveness?
So we are looking at government efficiency, of course. It's important about the efficiency of government in terms of transparency, speed of decision,Fighting corruption, which is a very important point, of course. How can you have a rule of law? How can you appeal a decision if you are unhappy of that? We look at that, but we look also at social consensus. I mean, somehow we see that countries which are succeeding have a kind of social consensus in the population. Where do we go and how do we do it? I think on the long run, this is what really matters. Do people agree on where the country is going?And
now it's the big moment in Thailand, as you may know, that we have military coup on 22nd of May. How has that changed the outlook of Thailand in terms of potentialities?
For the moment, it's too early to judge because the numbers are not there. It's too early. So people are looking at the situation, and I think that as a foreigner, I have a duty of reserve. I think for me, it's really a matter of saying,will people be happy with having more stability, more sense of direction? I think also that the leadership in any country, not only Thailand, has to stay very close to the people, to what they want. I always say, the definition of a good leader is to have followers. And there is nothing worse than leadership which is alone. So I think for any country and competitiveness, the fact that you still have a knowledge of what people want,the fact that they aspire to have security, stability, that they want to have their rights to be respected is very important. After the sense of direction is to be defined by the country itself.
What do you see sense of direction in Thailand? Where should we go from here?
Wherever you want, under the condition that you go there, which means take decisions. I think the worst thing that can happen is what happened with India in the past, changing direction all the time. open, closed. I think that business can adapt everything, provided the rules of the game are not changing. If you take China, China is not really a business-friendly environment, somehow. But the rules are clear. You know what you can do and what you cannot do, and the rules haven't changed in 25 years. So I think that what people expect is clarity of rules, sense of direction, and that's it.
Do you think it's the right moment for Thailand to clear up the mess in the past, and it's time for us now to move to the right direction?
I think it's time, number one, to clarify things, number two, to fight against corruption, and number three, I think to give this sense of direction. Once people have a feeling, okay, Thailand knows where it is going, everybody will respect it. I mean, you are sovereign countries, you have the right to decide whatever you want, and the others will adapt. But they need to know what are the rules of the game. It's a bit, we are out of the World Cup in football. You say, okay, we are playing football or we are playing rugby. Tell us what is the game, and that's it. But don't change the game every 2 months.
What's the element that business community or international community will say that, that's right, that's the moment of Thailand, that you are in the right direction? What can be elements to tell the world?
I think the first one, they want to have a rule of law. They want to know what are the law, what are the regulations, transparency of this regulation, accountability, who is responsible, who is taking the decision. And also they want to know, all right, in which direction are you going? Is it going to be an open economy, not an open economy? Are you going to invest in the countryside and the agriculture? Are you going to promote also the export again? Once this is clarified, I think the confidence level will come back.
Can that sense of direction happen during NCPO governing Thailand?
Why not? It's not up to me to judge. I'm Swiss and neutral. But I think whether this is the NCPO or anything that the Thai people will decide, we in the international community, we have to respect what is going to be the decisions. But we hope for the better because, Thailand is an essential country in ASEAN. We are now going to go into an economic community next year for the ASEAN. I think Thailand has a major role to play in this. And I think that, it's never good when a country is destabilized. So we hope that no matter what will be the decision, they will be good for what really matters is increasing the well-being of people because competitiveness is a tool, nothing else. It's not an objective. It's a tool to increase the prosperity of people. That's the only thing that people want. So we hope that it will happen.
The rule of the game that you say that Thailand should be back into the game, does it mean that we have to get back into democracy defined by Western country and election?
You have to define it the way you want. You have some countries are doing it in a different way. If you are looking at Singapore, Dubai, China, it's a very top-down approach to leadership. Fine, if the results are good, it is up to the people to define. In Europe and the US, we have a different conception, and I think we have to learn not to impose this conception to people. What we feel is after a certain stage of development, there is a natural feeling of people to say, we want our civil rights to be respected. How it is done, it's not up to us to judge.
In the past 26 years, you have seen up and downs of Thailand in macro context of other ASEAN countries or the world community. Where is Thailand at the moment, as far as you can see?
I think Thailand has been actually a very stable country in terms of economic performance. We have been always around 25, 27, etc. in our ranking. And I think that Thailand could have probably done more in exploiting its connection with the Asian market, with China. Japan, you are doing pretty well, but the rest, perhaps not enough, India. And I think that now there is a lot of thinking and orientation saying, yes, Europe and the US is important, but there is also part of the world which are developing quickly and where Thailand, could play a major role. And I think this is one of the big challenge and opportunity of the Asian economic community that you will have implemented next year.
One of the elements of competitiveness is infrastructure.
Yes.
What's the advice you can give to NCPO because they have to make a decision on infrastructure projects? Lots of many
I would
projects.
not give any advice to NCPO. What I would just say that the real issue about infrastructure is number one, can you connect it one with each other? Sometimes you have infrastructure, you have a harbor there, you have a bridge there, a railway here, an airport there, and nobody is connected. I think the key aspect is what I call logistic. How do you connect infrastructure in order to make it efficient for business? Country like the Netherlands is doing that very well. Singapore is doing it very well. It's not only I invest in high-speed train, for example, but do I need it? Where do I connect? How will it have a big impact on the economy? What is the feasibility study on that? I think this is really the big issue. It's not only investing in infrastructure, in making sure that it makes sense.
Because Thailand seems to be very confident in terms of our location, that we are at connectivity hub of ASEAN. Are we too complacent to think like that? Or are we correct?
No, you are very correct. But to be at the center is good, provided you have connection with the rest of with the other countries. And this is one of the impact and one of the priority of infrastructure, is to make sure that the connectivity with the various parts is there. And probably one of the good things of the Asian economic market, and this is one of the points in the blueprint, is to ensure there is much more connectivity, much more linkage between the economy, but also transportation and railways and all those kind of things. This is important.
It cannot just be proved by having those infrastructure without really using it.
Exactly. I mean, I've seen too many countries where, you know, there is a bridge somewhere, but nothing goes to the bridge, and after the bridge it doesn't go anywhere, you know, but still a bridge, which is very nice. So I think that the name of the game is to make sure that it is efficient for the economy and it is supporting a real need.
What are countries that Thailand should be looking at as role model? Because you have seen so many countries in parallel in Thailand, perhaps.
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
Role model as what, in terms of which field?
In terms of competitiveness, political stability.
I think that the name of the game is a bit like a menu à la carte. I mean, you have to benchmark with various countries of the world and try to find out what is relevant for Thailand. For example, I think what I just mentioned now, logistic and infrastructure, the Netherlands is very good at connecting everything. E-government, using internet and electronic governments, Estonia, surprisingly enough, is probably the most advanced country. E-customs, probably Singapore. Social consensus, etc., perhaps my country, Switzerland. Medium-sized enterprise, Germany. So you pick and choose everything, and it's a bit, I say, like making a salad. You put all that in the salad bowl, but you don't have a salad when you have only ingredients. You need a dressing. Now you may notice that the dressings always have a national name, Italian dressing, French dressing. You need the Thai dressing, and the Thai dressing is a value system of Thailand. You put everything together and you say, now, according to our value system, the way we are Thai people, how are we going to get all that together into one thing, which is competitiveness, and make it efficient? So that's where the value system, that's where the consensus is important. You can have all those things together and it will never work if the people don't want it to make it work.
Have other countries have to do the same in order to gain competitiveness by learning from others?
Oh yes, I remember Singapore. I spent a lot of time traveling around and studying what the others were doing, and going to Ireland to see how the Irish Development Authorities was attracting investments. I think that a lot of people are believing, okay, we have to study, and that's why maybe government efficiency depends also on government education. I mean, making sure that the civil service get the right training in order to understand that maybe things have been done elsewhere which can be adapted to the Thai environment, but could be very efficient. And I think this is important to have this modesty of mind to understand that things can happen elsewhere and can be of value.
At least 28...
I'm saying that because in Switzerland we don't have it. That's why I'm saying it.
At least 28 countries are above Thailand on the scale of IMD. What do they have in common?
Oh, they have a lot of things in common. Let's say the real winners at the very top. Number one, they have a very diversified economy. I think this is important. And Thailand is not too bad there. I'm coming from Switzerland. People tell me, oh, Switzerland, it's about chocolate and watches.
Which is true.
It is true. What about banking? Oh, yes, it's banking. What about food? Oh, yes, Nestle. What about pharmaceutical? Oh, yes, Novartis and Roche. And then you see that you have a highly diversified economy. Same for Germany.
And you have to be good in everything.
As many things as you can. But diversification is important. Number two, the made in. You need to manufacture. Made in Thailand is an important part of the image of Thailand, right? And there are some countries that have lost their manufacturing. Small and medium-sized enterprise. In every country I go, I see large companies at the top. But it's not in every country you have very competitive small and medium-sized enterprise. Germany is very good at that. You need to have that. You need to have the logistic I mentioned, added value logistic. You need to have the social consensus. They are all doing those things together. And I think that there is maybe something here in terms of competitiveness.
On the other hand, what do weaker countries or less competitive countries have in common?
They have in common that they don't do all that. And the second thing they have in common, I think the biggest issue is a lack of sense of direction. It's where people...
And Thailand is in that
No,
camp.
I'm not commenting on that. Now, what I'm saying is it was certainly one of the problems of some countries I have mentioned, where you go in a country and you say, where do you want to be in 5 years? People don't know, or the government do not know. Do you have a plan? Do you have a blueprint? Do you have a roadmap? People don't know. And I think this is probably the biggest issue, in my opinion, is when you go somewhere and people do not have a clear vision of where they want to go and a clear policy. I think this is the biggest problems in terms of competitiveness.
Who have to tell people that they need to know the direction? Should be the government, people themselves, or business community?
I think it should be the government's responsibility, but make sure that the people have a right of being consulted, or that they have the right to say, maybe we feel that we should go in another direction, etc. But at the end of the day, somebody has to take a decision, clearly, and this is the role of the government. I mean, you have to take a decision, because the worst that can happen is when you have too many ideas and nobody decides. So it's better to have a relatively bad decision rather than no decision at all. You have to go ahead, then you can correct it, but you need a decision. And you do not need to delay decision too much, but make sure that people are consulted and make sure that they follow you. As I mentioned, a real leader has followers.
In ASEAN country now, you see the political transition of Indonesia. What do you foresee the change in ASEAN as Indonesia is having the new leader?
It's not only Oxford, this is ASEAN with a new leader in Indonesia. It's also a lot of expectation with India, even if it's outside the ASEANs, but it will have an impact because it's a big market next to you. I hope that we will have a generation of leaders who are going to be much more pragmatic than in the past, less ideological, more pragmatic. Maybe because of their own history, they will have much more sensitivity to what people need. And I think there is a very big message today is that people want their daily life to be improved. If you look what has been happening in Brazil, for me it was striking, billions of dollars spent for the World Cup, but demonstration of the people in the street saying, we want better bus, we want better education, we want better school, better hospitals, fine, spending billions on the stadium, but we want things which are going to improve our daily life. And I think this is what maybe a new generation of leaders is going to be much more sensitive than the other one.
And overall, how do you see momentum of ASEAN community is going to be really materialized next year, by the end of next year? Where does ASEAN fit in the whole international community? So
first, this is the beginning next year. It will take time before it's going to be implemented. When you are looking and reading the blueprint about, trade, non-tariff barriers, tariff barriers, recognition of diplomas, recognition of products, rules of origin, it takes a long time. I see from the European Union, it takes years and decades before you get to the end of it. For a very simple reason, it's a question also of decision making. When you put countries together, the real issue is, do you accept that a little part of your sovereignty is going to be delegated to the regional union in which you belong? Are you going to take all the decision by unanimity or by majority? This is a very big issue. So this is the beginning of the road. I think it's a road in the right direction, but we should have no illusion. It's going to take time.
What should ASEAN not do to repeat the same mistake that EU has been facing? I
think the biggest issue of EU, of any regional agreement, is a decision-making process. At a certain time, when you are, let's face it, a federation, because this is becoming more and more a federation, I think you have to know how people are going to decide and who is going to decide. And if you continue to say, no, everybody has to decide about everything on unanimity, which is really the biggest issue in Europe. Europe now has 28 nations. You cannot have a unanimity vote on 28. Somehow, somebody has to say, okay, we have a majority, we go ahead. We take into consideration the minority, but we cannot have a unanimity on everything. This will be the biggest challenge.
In a way, maybe ASEAN is easier to manage because we
Yes.
have 10 countries.
Exactly. At the beginning, it's easier. And, well, I hope it will be easier. Will depend on the people. You know, you have very different nations, from Vietnam to the rest, with very different political system. That will not make it easy. And, but I hope you will succeed, because with smaller nations, the name of the game is to have access to big markets. You know, and if you have access to first the Asian markets all together, will be a big achievement. And from there to have bilateral agreement with China, India, will be very important. I come from a small country, Switzerland. We are 7 million inhabitants. We are nothing. But we have a bilateral agreement with the EU, so we have access to 750 million people. And we just signed on the 1st of July a free trade agreement with China. So we are small, but we have access to markets. And I think this is what should be.
What if the country cannot correct itself? Are we going to go downhill?
Well, yes, there is no doubt. I think that it's not only for a country, it's for an enterprise, it's for an individual. The name of the game is to adapt yourself in life. But again, you should adapt yourself and show resilience towards an objective, towards a goal. If you don't know, you know, I'm changing because I want to go there, it's fine. But if you say I'm changing, I don't know where I'm going, you continue to turn into circles. So I think, yes, change is important. Reform itself is important. I think it should be continuous reform, because continuous reform is easy to absorb. A brutal reform is always more painful to absorb. So if you have an ongoing reform process which is smooth, actually it's much easier for the population to accept it.
You are from Switzerland. You said you are neutral.
Yeah.
How do you think the geopolitics of the world at the moment? One side is the US, the other side is China. Where should Thailand take position?
Oh, I think you should be like us, a friend to everybody. No, you don't have to make a choice. I think that the world is becoming multipolar. You have more and more political power which have geopolitical ambitions, who want to become very important in the global sphere. This is obviously the US, Europe, China, now Russia, etc. I think the biggest issue now is that we can see breakdowns happening a bit everywhere, because nobody wants to be the policeman of the world. Nobody is going, you know, many years ago you had Russia and the US, and they were managing their own regions. Now if something happens somewhere else, nobody wants to manage it. So I think we see it in Africa. We see it in Iraq now. I think this is one of the big issues of the world today, that we are going to see, in my opinion, a multiplication of these breaking points of insecurity and uncertainty around the world.
No, any single country can really dominate the world community.
I think we are going to go back that no single country will want to be the policeman of the world, because most of them know they cannot do it. The US cannot do it anymore, clearly. China is not ready to do it and probably doesn't want. Russia has not the power nor the financial resources to do it. So I think we have a big vacuum where a lot of extremists are going in. You see it in Africa and elsewhere. And this is a lot of insecurity for also the business community, because take Africa. In 2050, Africa will be 2.4 billion people. Huge, but a huge place of instability and insecurity.
With IMD, how can you contribute to the world peace or world prosperity? Because the main element is to enhance competitiveness,
Yes.
in terms of economic factor. But in terms of world peace,
First of all, I mean, no joke apart, we are neutral because we are in Switzerland, which means we are producing a very neutral assessment of what is happening. We don't want to say we are in favor of this country or the other. It's a very neutral assessment. So we give the facts, and we tell people on the basis of these facts, which are clear, transparent. We have done it the same way on 25 years, so you can see the trends. It's up to you to decide. But at least the facts are correct. So that's our contribution.
how do you see direction of the world after seeing all this, how the nation, each nation has to compete with one another?
I think despite everything we are saying, I mean, it has been improving massively. If you are looking poverty, which is described absolute poverty, $2 a day. In 30 years, it went from 55% to 20% of the world population. Now, a lot of the improvement were done because of China and Asia, and less because of Africa. We have a lot of people who were in absolute poverty. They are not yet middle class, but they are getting into a situation where they can buy a product, etc., and they are back in the economy. I think that the middle class is improving everywhere, especially in Asia. It's a big market, will be also a big opportunity for Thailand, here in Thailand, but in the region. So from an economic point of view, I think the world is in a much better shape because wealth is much better distributed than it used to be 30 years ago. The real issue is not economic, the real issue will be political and geopolitical.
Thank you very much, Professor, for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
มุมมองของศาสตราจารย์สเตฟานกาเลลลี่นะคะผู้ก่อตั้งสถาบันจัดอันดับความสามารถในการแข่งขันระดับโลกวันนี้ได้ฉายภาพให้เห็นนะคะถึงจุดแข็งจุดอ่อนของประเทศไทยและสิ่งที่จะต้องเดินหน้าปรับปรุงเพื่อที่จะเข้าสู่แผนที่โลกในการแข่งขันในเชิงเศรษฐกิจต่อไปค่ะยังมีโอกาสรออยู่อีกมากค่ะและทั้งหมดคือตอบโจทย์และที่นี่ไทย PBS สำหรับคืนนี้ดิฉันณัฐฐา โกมลวาทินสวัสดีค่ะ